Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track. It's America's leading Formula One podcast. As always, I'm Brian, that's Rob. We're happy you're with us. And today, Rob, give everyone a little preview of what's coming their way.
Yeah, for sure. So this week we're going to hit news and social, as always. We then have an interview with Kyle, who's a founder of a new sports bar, actually more specifically a more motorsports focused bricks and mortar bar coming to the Hartford area. So good news for me, not so much for Brian. Where we actually chew the fat over, I'm going to say all things motorsport, but to be fair, he's a little bit more of a MotoGP fan. So for a little bit of time, we're going to go on to two wheels instead of four. But it was really good to kind of talk to him about that kind of other side of sports. Then we'll come back to good old Formula One. We'll close out fantasy update from last week because we'd recorded before it updated. And then we will have a preview of maybe... It's up there, arm wrestling with Spa for one of my favourite Grand Prix to watch, which is the Brazilian Grand Prix.
I love it, but I don't know if I'd put it up with the rarefied air of Spa.
For me, it's right up there. Mainly also because I'm very good at Interlagos on the PlayStation, better than I am at Spa. So,
now, do you use Chase Cam like I do?
No. So that's the running order. So let's jump in. News and social. Now, I'm going to hold my hand up to not really knowing the most about, and I'm not even going to pronounce it very well, but here we go. Mauro Foggieri. Oh, I messed that up. I messed it up, Brian.
Yeah, well, I can't come in to save you because I'd do it worse.
Okay, we'll try it again.
I also would
Mauro
put my hand up.
Foggieri? Okay. Legendary Ferrari designer passed away this week, age 87. I had heard of him. I knew of him, but not really in any depth, which is what spurred me to go and kind of do some good old interweb research on the World Wide Web and make our blog about it this week. So it was really interesting to really understand how much he had his hands in.
You are on a roll. Like, I do not like giving you credit for things that even for things you deserve it for, if I'm being honest. But so Rob's blog this week is great. I didn't appreciate the amount of impact he'd had in Formula One and also outside in terms of car design. And if you saw the if you saw the Twitter post or tweet, as they call it, that we put out, he also then left F1 and designed one of my all-time favorite, under the radar, hardly known by many supercars, the Bugatti EB110, and I had no idea. And it's just, I love stuff like that. I love the Murray Walkers and the people like, not Murray Walkers, I'm drawing a blank. Murray Walker's the commentator.
He is, and he's a legendary one.
Who designed the McLaren F1. Well, it'll come to me throughout the episode. But the designers like that who do F1, Gordon Murray Walker, there you go. And so I love
no, not doing that game again.
No. But my point is, the people like this who, I'd not really heard a lot about and appreciated, and you realize the impact they had on a sport you love. Great blog, man. Really great blog.
Cheers. So yeah, go check out our blog and see if you already know about him, you can fact check me, and if you don't, then you can learn something, hopefully. So yeah, that was cool. Also, this week, what caught my eye was Valtteri Bottas is going to go and go to the Race of Champions and team up with Mika Hakkinen, and also he's going to enter the individual event. He was supposed to do this, I don't know if it's last year or the year before, but he was supposed to do it and COVID got in the way of everything. So he's going to come along and get involved in that. So it'd be cool to see him and Hakkinen rocking up together. I
mean, I saw the Race of Champions account put out a picture of the two of them together, and they were so excited to have, Team Finland set up there. I'm excited. I can't wait. I hope, I've tried to watch these things before, and it's not always the easiest, so I'm hoping this year I can figure it out a little better on where it is and how to watch, because I'm excited to see it. And then Vegas had a launch party yesterday, Saturday the 5th. Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, Sergio Perez, and Alex Albon there. Interestingly, if people saw any of this, they brought a Red Bull and were going up and down at during the week leading up to the launch party, going up and down the strip. And it was amazing to watch. They then took the car through a casino. It looked like it might have been the Bellagio. I wasn't sure, but right down the middle of a casino. And every single one of my friends who is not into F1 but knows I am sent me the clip, and it was hilarious. Like, I got it 14 times at least. And I'm like, thank you. This is really interesting. And by the last one, I'm like, oh, thank you very much. But I'm like, I saw it. I love this stuff. I eat it up.
Was that
I'm the YouTube guy.
Was that the clip where the SUV with the huge boom arm on top of it was following it up the strip? So you'd have the Red Bull fly past, and
Right.
do the wraparound, and
The
then
matte
this big
black
SUV would
SUV
come
so it
around,
doesn't
matte black with
reflect
the big
light.
Then
Yep.
it's got like an arm on top of it, like it's like some extra out of RoboCop or something. Like it's got a missile launcher on the end of that thing.
So-
and I thought they were supposed to have whatever they're called, the the equilibrium of the whole thing. And this thing's flapping around on the end. I'm sure it's not supposed to flap around like that.
I didn't see that part, but yeah, they did. And actually, I read something interesting that they keep using the older cars, not just because the current cars are busy, but the turbo hybrids are harder to manage. You require more engineers, more computers, more information to get the car going. But the older V8s and V10s are easier to maintain. You can do it with like a couple laptops and a few engineers.
And they sound better.
They do sound better. I mean, so like it's interesting to me, right? You have these cars with this amazing sound, which is part of it, and everyone's out there watching them go up and down the strip. And then soon the turbo V6s are going to show up next year, and people will be like, "Wait, what happened?"
Nah, people won't remember.
Yeah, that's true.
Short memories.
Short memories. Oh, wait, one thing that is still in our memory and topical is the move last week that we did not talk about, at least not much because we were recording quickly. The Ross Chastain NASCAR move. And yes, I may call him Ryan at some other point of this episode because I got confused. But if you haven't seen it, we'll post the video to it. It is unbelievable. He rides the wall. We'll talk about it in the interview with Kyle. He rides the wall around the last two corners. And the reason I bring this up is there's a team radio of the other drivers reacting to it in real time as he whizzes past them along the wall. And it is fantastic because the other drivers are about as excited as I was watching it. Like, I didn't think that would work. Like, what is he doing? It's a video game move. This is great.
And just for anybody that hasn't seen it or doesn't understand, basically he's coming up. I think it's the final. It's the final lap, isn't it? It's the last couple of corners, and he needs to pass two cars in order to make it through, make it to the playoffs. And there's really no room in the middle of the field. The kind of the center of the track is kind of occupied by the cars that he basically needs to get round. And he's really got two choices. He's got the Lightning McQueen go on the inside and turn right to go left, which we know only happens in Pixar world, or floor it, smash into the wall head on, basically, and keep the foot nailed to the accelerator and just grind your way around the outside doing some kind of turbo effect. And he literally did. Just slingshots around the outside and overtakes everybody he needs to. You have to see it to believe it.
It is epic, and I'm sure the Ferrari strategists were checking it out.
Oh, yeah, you could just imagine them. Right, Carlos, we want you to drive into the wall. This is an F1 car.
Yeah.
No, we really do. Do it.
So, yeah, you picked Carlos. I was ready. So there were some other videos that were more F1 topical and related. Ferrari put out the C² challenge, and it was short videos, only 3.5 minutes, of Carlos and Charles in the car, in a Ferrari. I didn't see if it was an SF90 or what it was, but they were driving around at COTA, and they were trying to name U.S. states. So they were very busy, sliding the car around, which is why I'm assuming they could name about 4 states. I recognize the rest of the world doesn't care about all 50, but it was like epically short, the list of names. And the pronunciations was fantastic. I've never heard anyone say Colorado the way the two of them tried to get through Colorado. But it was fun. 3.5 minutes, check it out. I then, of course, as last week, I'm looking for the best videos, and I hadn't been on the Williams channel in a while, so I made sure to go check it out. And you can watch Nicky Latifi, Alex Albon, and Logan Sargent with Nicky and Alex making ice cream and then stacking it as high as they could, with Logan basically providing commentary. It's not bad. It is 12 minutes long, so if you just tune in for like 4 or 5 minutes, you kind of get the gist and you could leave. But it was fun to kind of see them having a good time building ice cream towers. And then the last one I want to highlight is, and again, like I said, I don't do this often enough, Rob did a blog a week prior of the 80s TV-themed F1 cars. And we talked very briefly about it, but Rob put it into a YouTube short. And so that is a YouTube video, and it is so good. We'll have the link in the show notes on the podcast platforms. Anyway, second one and last one. Let's stop. I'm gonna stop being nice to you for a couple weeks after that, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Last one. Again, I know I'm predictable, but I'm consistent, and it's Lollipop Man again. Now,
He's good.
he is good, and it's the attention to detail that gets me every time on this. So this was the Mexican race review, and normally it's just the race is pretty much what the video concentrates on. But this time he decided there's a little bit at the beginning which concentrated on practice, and I was thinking, what's going on here? And you've got Carlo jogging along. With a little kind of what you can't really work out what it is. It looks like a little stone bouncing along behind him, and of course it was the whole debris De Vries radio exchange. Fantastic. Danny Rick kicking. It's Gasly, isn't it? That he
No, it's
crashed.
Yuki.
Yuki.
I love the kick too.
I love the kick. So he comes up because, again, if you haven't seen these videos, he doesn't animate the cars. He has them running around the tracks. So Danny Rick going into Yuki is shown by Danny running up behind him, kicking him up the butt. And then as he does that, it does like a Mario sound effect as he gets like a power up, and then he goes sprinting off and overtaking everybody else. That was superb. But the chef's kiss piece at the end was Mercedes team radio telling George and Lewis that those Red Bull tires are going to fall off the cliff any minute. Just be patient, just be patient. And they do it a few times. And then right at the end, it's dark. All the other teams have left. I think there's a Red Bull plane taking off in the background. And it's just Toto and George and Lewis. And Toto says, any minute now, they're going to fall off the cliff.
That was great.
So as Brian said, after as we like to kind of give people what they want, it's been suggested that we should put the URLs to all these videos that we review in the show notes. So that will be happening from this week. I will drop them in there. So if you pick this up and look at the show notes, you should be able to click on each of the links and go and take a look at these videos and maybe decide if you agree. The ones that Brian says meh, you might like, and vice versa. So please feel free to get in touch and tell Brian how wrong he is or how wrong I am. So
Always welcome. Always welcome.
So, as we kind of said, this week, we kind of got in touch with this guy, Kyle, at the Petrolhead Cafe. Like, when we first started podcasting, I think because we didn't really know what we were doing, and I found him because he was a local guy, and he'd got his podcast up and running. We kind of traded messages, and kind of COVID got in the way and all this kind of good stuff. But we finally kind of made it happen. Like I say, they're a podcast that is dedicated to all things motorsport. They got two hosts, Kyle, who's the big MotoGP fan, and Chaz, he's an amateur driver and a kind of a stunt driving instructor. In fact, they actually, as you'll hear on the interview, they managed to snag the Top Gear Stig to come on their show.
US Top Gear.
US Top Gear Stig,
yes.
Yeah. I'm still a little jealous of that still.
Oh, I'm hugely jealous of it. Hugely jealous.
So Kyle came along, spoke to us in the middle of the week. So let's take a little listen to how things went with Kyle. Okay, Kyle, we were chatting just before we started recording, and you were talking to Brian about how you two have got like the Chicago roots. And I wanted to ask you, because you, on the Petrolhead Cafe, you said you got the idea for doing the Petrolhead Cafe as in a real bricks and mortar kind of motorsport bar when you were up in Chicago, and you basically tried to convince the bar manager to turn on just the audio for a race, I think it was, and they said no.
Right. Yeah. I mean, my brother-in-law and I were. If I saw the name of the bar, I would recognize it, but I can't quite remember it now. But it was in the northern end of the city where my brother-in-law and his wife lived. And one Sunday afternoon, I remember it was the race. It was April because I wanted to watch the races at Circuit of the Americas. The MotoGP was there, and it's noon. There's no Chicago sports on. We were like the only two people in the bar, and I said, hey, can we listen to the commentary? Because back then they still had Nick Harris, who I love his he is probably the quintessential MotoGP commentator. He has all of the right emotions at all the right times. So yeah, I really enjoyed his commentary when he was part of MotoGP. But yeah, the bartender said, "Oh no, sorry, we only do that for Chicago sports." And I was kind of. I said, it's noon on a Sunday and no one else is here but us. So, but couldn't do anything about it. And that's kind of when the idea popped into my head. There needs to be a sports bar that is dedicated to motorsports and perhaps lots of other sports that aren't your conventional American television sports, your baseball, your basketball, your football are kind of the big three. Hockey maybe a little bit, but I have lots of friends who are like, oh yeah, I don't know where I would go to watch Premier League. I've got a friend who's a big Man City fan, and he's like, yeah, I don't really have anywhere to go. So that's going to be part of it. Premier League football, proper football, and rugby as well. And we
Wow.
do, and oh yeah, there'll be rugby and cricket. So
Oh my gosh! So basically, anything on wheels and everything imported from England.
correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. When
Just
do I sign
about.
up?
Yeah, sign up. I do have a place where you can sign up, but the sign up requires a minimum of $100 cash. So
Well,
that's
just
the
to
price of signing up.
I was going to say, just to close the circle on that, you're actually kind of, so you embarked on this big idea to get this bar up and running, and then like probably a lot of people that embarked on ideas around about that time, COVID came in and completely screwed all your plans up, right? So now I think, I'm going to say it, and then you can edit it out if we're not allowed to say it, but you're basically on the cusp of now Phoenix from the Flames and getting a bricks and mortar place in just one of the, is it West Hartford, somewhere around there?
It's Hartford. Yeah, Hartford proper. So even while I was in Chicago, I've always kind of had big ambitions for Hartford as a city. I did get to travel around the country a lot while I lived in Chicago. One of the nice things is that you can catch a plane to just about anywhere in the continental U.S. It's a short ride
One of
relatively.
many
And
great parts of Chicago, for sure.
yeah, my wife and I took a weekend trip to San Francisco one time, just for like 3 days, because we had the time, it was cheap, and we didn't have kids. So but I digress. So yes, the original idea came in 2015. I showed up back in Connecticut in 2017, and then in 2018 I kind of decided, let's see if I can start this thing. 2018 was just a very slow year, just kind of just a lot of observation, a little bit of what is sometimes called guerrilla marketing. The first marketing I did was I had a piece of paper and I went around to a motorcycle swap meet where people were selling and buying used motorcycle parts, and I just got people to sign up with their emails, and I just kind of started this very little grassroots email list, and I still have it. Actually, I sent out the link for my crowdfunding campaign just the other day. But yes, today officially the ink is still drying on the lease contract that I signed at about 12:30 today.
Wow.
So
Congratulations.
Yeah, I can officially say that Petrolhead Cafe is coming to Hartford. It's going to be in the Parkville neighborhood. It is right next door to Hog River Brewing Company.
Oh,
and
nice.
Across the street from the Parkville Market. For those of you listeners who are familiar with that area of Hartford. Apparently, I don't know if I guess I don't know if it's necessarily a secret, but I guess Hog River is actually moving across the street to a larger building. And there's a possibility that they're kind of selling off a lot of their space and equipment to like someone else who's going to do a brewery there. So there might be two breweries in the neighborhood, but
can't see that being a downside.
Yeah, no, it's I had to jump on the opportunity. It was definitely I'm like I don't have any business partners. I'm just a 30-something middle class Joe with a wife and two kids. Just bought a house in Hartford in April. And that's where my house in Hartford. So but yeah, this has really come together as far as in a very unexpected but like kind of sense of fulfilling the dream, sort of, purchasing a house in Hartford and establishing this business in Hartford is really like is really, yeah, in a way, like, I don't want to get too, fulfilling the dream just seems a little too cliche, too fluffy.
Well,
like,
I mean, just to make your dream even better. So, as me and Brian were preparing for this, Brian mentioned how he's come up with some ideas for some. Was it meals that could be served in the Petrolhead Cafe, Brian, or is it drinks, or is it both?
These are terrible. So, Kyle, I'm sorry.
Oh, don't apologize. I probably already thought of this.
Well, but in this, we'll see. So, all right. First off, I know you haven't thought of this one. It's the Dirty Side Duo. like Rob and Rob hasn't heard these either. So
Okay.
as he
Okay.
recoils in horror, as I named the first one,
All right.
it's margaritas and chips and salsa, but they come together no matter what because it's the duo. Because that's what we are. They get better. Don't worry. Here's a good one.
I hope you didn't
one.
peek early there.
Oh, no. Here's a real one. So Nico Hulkenberg, the test and reserve driver for Aston Martin now and Renault in the past, drove a lot. He's one of the most accomplished non-podium drivers ever. How about the Nico Hulkenberger and bring like a German Bavarian blue cheese on top of it? Boom. He's German. This would be great. The Nico Hulkenberger cheeseburger. That's probably my best one. So the fact that you're slightly groaning, I'll take it.
I will do it. You know, it's a gimmick. Everybody needs a gimmick.
The Nico Hulkenberger, I mean, it sells itself.
Oh yeah.
So then George Russell, who drives for Mercedes now, obviously, has really gotten into a lot of good British isms on the radio recently. And Blimey has come out a couple times. So I thought you could combine it with Graham Hill, the F1 winning world champion whose son Damon Hill won in 96. You could call it the Key Blimey Pie with Graham Cracker Hill crust.
Key Blimey Pie.
I mean, that's an opportunity.
Key Blimey Pie. Okay.
With
How many more
Graham
of these have
Cracker
you got?
Hill crust. I'm almost done. And then, so shifting to MotoGP, I know you're a motorcycle guy and appreciate it. Obviously, Valentino Rossi is amazing and well accomplished. But, you know, here in the States, we love our cheap wine. And Carlo Rossi wine comes in a jug with a thumb handle. So you could call it just Rossi wine and show up with the jug and pour it out. And, you know, people will say, oh, all right. NASCAR, obviously popular now with so many folks. Cole Custer runs for Stuart Haas in the NASCAR events. You could have a side of coleslaw Custer. And then my last one, and I'm going to go...
I'm sorry, Kyle.
I'm going to go current
this is
events
fun.
on this one. Current events.
All right.
You ready?
Sure.
So this last weekend, Ryan Chastain probably set the world on fire, Twitter on fire, riding the wall all the way around the last two corners to make it to the playoffs.
Is it Ryan or Ross?
Yes. And so you could have Chastain's plantains and just kind of a nice pan-fried plantain.
plantains.
Yeah. And topically, you could have it for a few months, and then when he's no longer, you know, interesting, you move on. But those are my quick dirty side suggestions for
They're
menu
quick Brian
titles.
suggestions. I'm not sure I want the dirty side name against any of those.
Come on.
Okay.
Nico Hulkenberger.
Nick and
is really good.
Hulkenberger, I give you that. That was all right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then after
that's
that-
a fun one.
But anyway.
Okay. Oh yeah, no, I can't wait to that'll be a little ways down the line, you know, to make sure, you know, if we don't get killed by economic forces beyond our control.
And-
you know, yeah, I would love to name things like that. Yeah.
When
for
you
sure.
open or getting close, for the cost of a cold beer, Rob and I are happy to do this again with more topical type items. And
Oh, yeah,
no
no.
cost more than that. It's totally on the house.
Right. You know, originally I really considered being a brewery instead of a restaurant, but you know, and I mean there are just oodles of naming conventions that work for beers. You know, there's like if you were like Clutch IPA or Double Clutch Double IPA or Apex IPA, Double Apex IPA, like all kinds of naming conventions. I think there is a Connecticut brewery that was clever enough to name one of their beers Send It, which I was disappointed because I really wanted that name, you know.
You could have a beer called Lick the Stamp and then send it.
Right, true. That is true.
That is the other
I wonder
part
how
of that
many people
expression,
would get
I mean.
that. Yeah.
And only nerds like us.
Okay. Well, you know,
you are right though, because every time I'm in the liquor store and I'm looking at all the artwork on the beer cans, I always just kind of think that a dirty side IPA, some sort of Formula One beer would have a real, you know, they've got artwork for almost everything else going, but they're just missing some kind of motorsport related one. So
Right. And I feel it's very fortuitous that I ended up right next to a brewery. I get along well with Joy and Ben, the owners of Hog River. You know, they've expressed a little bit of interest over the years that they would like me to take that restaurant spot that's next door to them, and finally it's happening. But yeah, I hope to collaborate with some local breweries and generate some cleverly named and beers with the artwork to go with it.
you because you were originally not originally. You've recently been doing, was it the pop-up stores before you got the brick and mortar, focusing more on the food, right? So what's the vision? So Petrolhead Cafe opens up, right? What is it, first of all? Is it the coffee shop with the food? Is it the sports bar with the big TVs and the loud commentary everywhere? What does it look like on day one in your mind's eye when you open that door up?
And how do you stop Rob from running in like as fast as possible the second the door opens?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's something I should think about actually. And I mean, I would love to have a place that really kind of transforms a little bit, just by, making adjustments with the lighting, or things like that. Like, if it's during the week, obviously there's not a lot of racing going on during the week. If it's got more of a coffee shop feel, more laid back, relaxed. And then, late at night, 8, 9, 10 o'clock in the evening on a Friday or Saturday night, kick up the rock and roll music, and it's like a cool bar for, people to hang out at. So,
yeah, because I mean, Brian and I have been talking about, like, when we came together to do the pod, right? Talking about Formula One, or probably the same for you with the MotoGP, is kind of like felt like a dirty little secret that no one else really talks about, and like trying to find like-minded souls was kind of like really difficult actually. And I got lucky enough that just me and my neighbor, we were down the Iron Horse Sports Bar in Unionville, and the bar manager overheard us talking about F1, and then suddenly he's putting the races on a Sunday morning for us. But I mean, it's hardcore because there's literally about 6 or 7 of us in there. It's the same guys every week, bless them. There's the guys that turn up in their Red Bull merch. There's a couple of Hasp enthusiasts, and then there's kind of me and maybe my neighbor. But I don't know a way of really helping grow that. I really wanted it to kind of, start snowballing, that suddenly all these F1 fans that had been sitting at home scared to come out of the shadows were going to pile on down this bar every Sunday morning. It's not quite happened. Maybe next season. But maybe there's a new venue in town.
Well, Kyle's right. I mean, even Chicago, right? So when I would try to go see a Packer game somewhere, if it weren't a Chicago sports team, it was, and especially if it's a rival team, it was not good. And there was a bar on the north side of Chicago that was a Packer bar. So I would literally go there knowing they'd have the sound on for the game I wanted to hear. And so you're totally right. I mean, like if you had, and I'm sorry, a soccer game that you wanted to hear the sound for, or cricket, the match is on and you want to hear it and you want to see it, I mean, that'd be brilliant. And we haven't even talked about, as I list those, all of the different motorsports that would be fantastic. So I love the idea you have.
Right. So, and if this kind of helps illustrate what I want Petrolhead to be to the general public, I've had this kind of catchphrase in my mind, whether it's whatever it's worth, but, come for the food, stay for the racing, right? Like, I'm going to attract the general public with, really good food. I'm confident that I have the best smoked barbecue beef brisket in the Hartford area.
I'm in.
That's what I marketed. Yeah, that's what I marketed.
Brian's flying down from Chicago now.
Yeah, I'm there.
Right.
Sign me up.
Right. So that's what I marketed. That was the only food I did. I just served brisket and brisket sandwiches out of my pop-up in 2019. And of course, 2020 and the pandemic happened. So that's when I kind of kicked off the podcast and started putting some merchandise on my website and so forth for sale. But yeah, that's my flagship product, I guess, is the smoked brisket.
And pair it with a Dirty Side IPA, and this could be a match made in heaven, I'm telling you. But, going back to your podcast, so your co-host Chaz is he's an amateur racer, right? As well as having a day job, he actually races.
He does. Yeah. Lately, he's been doing endurance. He races with a team that's out of Michigan, I believe. But yeah, he's done a good 4, maybe 5 races with them over the last couple of years. And, they've had mixed fortunes at their races, but they're a very, very committed team. And they work really, really hard for an amateur team. But yeah,
he's more the 4 wheels guy and you're more the 2 wheels guy, right?
Correct.
Because I went back and listened to, you had an episode in June 2020 of F1 versus MotoGP. And you were taking the lead, talking through MotoGP, and I was trying to follow along. I'm going to be 100% honest with you that when you said the word Valentino Rossi, I was like, oh, I know that. And then for the rest of it, it was like nothing. But you two were having a discussion about, I want to say, is it Danny Pedrosa?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you were saying that he's kind of like the greatest ever rider never to win, and you were trying to work out which F1 driver, and I think
Right.
Chaz said Bottas, and then because of when you recorded it, Verstappen hadn't won a title yet, he was saying, oh, it could be Verstappen, and you were kind of going back and forward about which racer it might have been, but thankfully here on the dirty side, we can tell you what the answer is.
Is it Mark Webber?
No, you've got to go. You've got to take the clock way back. So it's kind of commonly held belief that Sir Sterling Moss is the greatest driver to never win the championship. I think he was runner-up 4 times, and widely held belief that he is the guy.
He famously actually cost himself a championship by giving someone else an honest answer that they didn't need a penalty. It's a very long story, but a competitor had been penalized for leaving the track, and Sterling Moss said, no, that's not what happened. They spun around and they, regained their forward momentum, and it cost him the championship. One of those opportunities. We actually did on our podcast, we did what we call Vale's Tales, where we go back through history and look at some of the drivers, and we recap Sterling Moss. It's an amazing story. So I would echo Rob's point. If anyone ever asks best F1 driver to never win the championship, we think it's Sterling Moss.
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about the old guard of Formula One. I mean, I know the names and I know little bits and pieces of the story, their stories. But yeah, no, I even without knowing a lot, I can totally understand. Yeah, he was a brilliant driver.
Now, one thing that you did when we were setting this up, you kind of put a little question out there and said, "Hey, do you guys have Amazon Prime? Have you watched MotoGP Unlimited?" And I've got to be honest, hadn't even heard of it, didn't know it existed. But I thought, well, I'm speaking to you today, Kyle. I'm going to throw myself in there. I'm going to watch a couple of episodes. Brian, did you get a chance to check it out?
Why don't you continue, Rob?
You didn't, did you? Okay, it's fine. So,
it's quite all right. I brought it up a little late.
That's fine. I was intrigued. So, do you want like the honest non-MotoGP? Well, I say non-MotoGP fan. I'm the kind of guy that if it's on, I will watch it, but I'm not invested enough to really remember anyone's names. But I will watch this crazy sport where people with like zero care for their own lives throw themselves around on bikes at super speed. So I enjoy it. I just don't know that much about it, right?
Any critique of MotoGP Unlimited has already been hashed out and debated by all of the enthusiasts anyway. We all know that it is not the best.
Good.
But
I'm glad you say that.
At least they fixed the biggest problem fairly quickly, and that is when the show first came out on Amazon, March I think it was of this year. They didn't have the subtitles. It was dubbed. Like all the Spanish speakers were dubbed into English. Oh, it was terrible. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. Yeah, Amazon had it like there for a little less than a week, and then people complained so badly. They removed the dubbing, and it was just the subtitles, which was great. So they at least fixed that. Bare minimum. That was the worst
so I didn't get to see it in all its horror then. Just
correct.
So. My first takeaway from it was, it really was a clone of, they looked at Drive to Survive and said, we want to do that, but for motorbikes. I mean, like, even like the way all of it is done, kind of even the music and the layout and the way they crop shots and move between and transition. I'm like, okay, so this is Drive to Survive for MotoGP. Okay, fine. I know what I'm going to expect here.
Right.
The only problem, and I don't know if Drive to Survive has this problem because I know a lot about the sport, I don't know if it was moving at too fast a pace or too disjointed for the new fan. Because I watched that first episode and I had no idea what was going on. Like stories would get introduced and then suddenly you'd be looking at a completely different rider talking about something completely different. And race weekends were kind of like blink and you miss it. It would kind of go, right, and now we're going to this track and here's qualifying. Oh, qualifying's over. And here's the race. And then you'd see someone fall off a bike and then go, and that's it over. And there's the podium. I was like, it was so fast. It was like, unless if you'd watched the season, I guess you would have been looking at those moments and going, oh yeah, I remember that.
Right.
But they didn't really explain anything. So what's it like for you as someone who's a big fan? Does it get your seal of approval and you love it and it is a reminiscing type show?
Yeah, so even before that the show debuted, I knew I'm of the opinion that Netflix as a production entity is clearly superior to Amazon production. There's no doubt about that. And I didn't go into watching MotoGP Unlimited with great expectations, I should say, because I knew it wouldn't be as good as Drive to Survive production wise. There are certain things that prevent it from being that way anyway. I mean, let's say that Netflix produced MotoGP Unlimited,
Yeah.
which is not the best name anyway. I thought they should have called it. I think it would, like, the word Godspeed would be a great name for that show.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. It's like, oh no, we're debuting this show. What do we call it? MotoGP Unlimited. Okay, that's it. Okay. Time for lunch.
At least they didn't call it MotoGP Prime.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. But the language of the paddock is mostly Spanish, Catalan, and Italian a little bit. So it's not English like Formula One. Formula One has a massive fan base anyway. And if folks outside of Anglophone nations speak a language other than their own, it's probably English. So, people the world over can watch Drive to Survive and feel more connection. And there's all the cultural nuances that accompany a language anyway. But when I first watched it, I mean, it was okay. I was excited for it, but it was. I can see why you would think it would just seemed a little bit hurried, and I kind of agreed, and there's just not enough.
There wasn't enough storytelling, and I'll tell you what I mean by that is that there was an F1 equivalent on Drive to Survive where I can't remember who it was who'd crashed, and they'd done a lot more backstory. It showed like the anatomy of a crash, what had happened, how he'd lost control, gone into the wall, these were injuries he got, blah 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 blah, and then. The name of the guy escapes me now, but it's the guy that was returning from injury. I think on that first episode, he'd been out for like 9 months. He'd had a really bad injury, which you could only get by the fact that every time he took his shirt off, you could see a scar on his arm.
Oh,
and
yeah,
they
Marquez, yeah.
Yes, and they showed this kind of like 5-second clip, I presume, of him coming off his bike, because we weren't told where it was when it happened or what injuries he sustained. So that's why I kind of felt like I would have felt a bit more invested if they'd kind of like shown that crash. And I don't want like... I don't want to kind of dine out on somebody getting hurt, but a couple of different angles of what had happened, what had led to it, quite what his extent of his injuries were, right? It just kind of, they went, crash, he's back, he's sitting in ice water, he's got a scar. I was like, oh, okay. But I did kind of, the weird thing is though, having criticized it that way, I do kind of want to watch some more episodes now. I did start getting drawn into it a little bit. So, maybe there's a MotoGP fan inside me.
Yeah. I mean, before Drive to Survive was a thing, Amazon did a show about F1. It was called Grand Prix Driver.
Grand Prix Driver.
Yeah, Michael Douglas. You know about this?
I watched it. Of course I watched it.
Yes. We've just found the first person ever that watched it.
I've mentioned this for months and months and months, and everyone thinks I'm making it up. Michael Douglas narrating 4 episodes of McLaren in 2018.
Yeah.
It is great.
McLaren.
Yeah, it was so great. 4 episodes, and it was horrible. But Stoffel Van Dorn was the star of it, and now he's moving to Aston Martin as their test and reserve driver, taking over for Nico Hülkenberg.
Right. I just get such a kick out of that name, Stoffel Van Dorn. Yeah,
they based the whole show around him, and I would not sure I'd call him electric. But anyway.
I mean, you want to take a name though and create a menu item out of Stoffel Van Dorn?
Yeah, you should use those.
I think it's primed and ready. Primed and ready name.
I don't know where you're going with it, but if it's just Stoffel briskets, then go for it. It's like a tower. Just like stuffed something. Stoffel Van Dorn cabbage. Stuffed cabbage. I don't know.
I can't believe you're getting drawn into this by Brian. But
now he knows. Kyle knows this is gold.
Oh yeah. Right. Yeah.
No, this
is. So the one thing though that now see, I'm gonna have to give you guys some kudos because I'm hoping the kudos to give you is similar to what me and Brian do over here, which is that when I listened to that MotoGP and F1 episode you guys did, and you took the first half of the show to explain kind of the background of MotoGP, I felt that was more kind of MotoGP paint by numbers, where I learnt more in that 30 minutes listening to you talk about it than I'd got from this kind of garbled episode on there. So kind of, I'd like to think that in some of our early episodes, when we were trying to bring new fans into F1, that we would kind of do that. But who knows? Difficult to know, isn't it, when you know the sport inside out? But
Yeah, it's also I think that there was probably also a conscious effort not to overlap and repeat and rehash a lot of things that that are explained in other documentaries, because there are several out there. I mean, I think Red Bull actually has a great documentary that's free on Red Bull TV. It's just called Racing Together, and it's got a great history of Grand Prix motorcycle racing. And so that came out a few years ago. I can definitely understand why. Yeah, the show is a little hurried, not a whole lot of background. I think.
does it get
I mean,
better as
Mark,
the episodes go by?
it's hard for me to judge because
Oh, yeah.
I already had a lot of information, like knowledge. I think, I mean, Mark Marquez is the best thing since Valentino Rossi. I mean, Valentino Rossi won 9 world championships in his Grand Prix career. You know, 7 of them in the Premier class, but Mark Marquez has won 8 championships in his Grand Prix career, and 6 out of 8 have been in the highest level, the Premier class. And he's been the rider of the last decade, really. He came into MotoGP at age 20 in 2013 and won the championship in his first season. He became the youngest ever MotoGP rider to win a race at 20 years old when he won at Circuit of the Americas in 2013. So he's huge. And yeah, like I agree that more of his backstory should have been shown, and that history developed, and yeah, angles of the big crash that occurred in 2020 that has led to so much drama around him over the last few years.
Yeah, because if it was kind of angled at people like me that were new, then if you're in the same way that I think they were trying to do a lot more storytelling in Drive to Survive to get the new fans in and get them to like know these people as characters, so they're going to start rooting for them when they watch races. I think maybe they missed a little bit of a trick on that, because like I say, I am going to watch more of it because I did kind of enjoy it, but I do feel like I'm going to need to like watch it again and take notes because it didn't kind of like saturate.
But you had to work to make an item, a beverage, food named after him. Whereas Rossi, I mean, Kyle's going to walk out with the thumb in the jug, and he's going to pour it, and here's your Rossi wine, and people be like, Valentino?
Right, I'm getting back on track now, Brian. You just mentioned you name checked your pod and the fact that you've had guests. I want to know, how is it you or Chaz that has the link, and how did you get the US Stig from Top Gear on your show?
Oh, that was all Chaz. The two of them connected on Facebook. I think they each were like part of some discussion when it came to like being a track driving instructor or something like that. And so Chaz just reached out and, you know, what the heck, why not? What's the worst he could say is no.
Yeah.
So but he accepted, and yeah, we were able to interview him.
It was a good episode. Listening to some of the stuff that they had him doing in the cars, and I actually kind of thought there was maybe more of a divider between US Top Gear and UK Top Gear, but like he tells a story about when Jeremy and the gang were over, and it kind of does actually feel like it was all kind of one happy-ish family. But yeah, some of the things that he was being asked to do in cars, that was a really good listen. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, for sure. It was a lot of fun. If there's one more thing I just wanted to say about MotoGP Unlimited is, I'd be curious, of course, to know how, if you watch the rest of the episodes, I'd be curious to your impression of them.
Well, I'll do you a favor. What I'll do is I'll watch the other episodes, and then you can buy me a beer in your bar, and I'll tell you all about it.
Deal.
Yes,
Kyle's giving away free beers left
anything
and right.
for a free beer. I'm telling you. So, just doing a time check here. We're coming up on time. So, when do you think the grand opening is? When can I come and cash that beer in?
Yeah. So it's going to be early next calendar year. You know, when I say early next year, before the end of March is what I mean.
And you're going to get is the US Stig going to come in and do donuts outside to a fanfare? And...
Are you going to have donuts? That'd be perfect.
Yeah.
No
donuts. Oh yeah,
donuts.
I know, donuts. True, donuts.
So is that no to the US Stig coming along to open it for you? I mean, come on, he's a friend of the show.
True.
You should be able to get him to come along and do some kind of like stunt driving.
Right. I mean, we should. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely have visions of festivals and things, a few years down the line once things are moving along.
Down the line, this is the big opening car. You want Stig, you want Chaz in whatever he drives. You want someone on a MotoGP bike doing wheelies down the
Yeah,
street. And actually, mate, yeah, you don't want to get shut down on your first day, though. I
true,
guess
true.
so.
But I mean, I mean, if you had a few $1 million you could give me to make all that happen, I would absolutely do it.
I mean, yeah, I've got quite a few million just lying around doing
Great.
nothing. So,
Let's
I
talk.
mean, if you've seen the quality of the t-shirts on our store, I think you'd know that we don't have.
We try.
Oh man. Oh, cool. So, just to wrap things up, then, I know where we are in the F1 season. We're unfortunately coming to the end, so then me and Brian are going to go into some kind of like black hole of nothingness for a few months until it all starts up again next year. Where are you in MotoGP? Done and dusted, or
Oh,
are you in
yeah.
sort of similar sort of?
Well, it is almost over, but it's going to be a very exciting end to this season. So the final race is on Sunday in Valencia, Spain, and it's the one for all the marbles. Is that the phrase? It's the yeah, all to play for. I don't know, but it's down to
Both work.
so the championship has come down to two contenders. Fabio Quartararo, who is last year's champion, and Francesco Bagnaia, who goes by Pecco. Um, it's the two of them, and it was the two of them contending last year. Unfortunately, Francesco Bagnaia, he crashed out at one of the late races out of the lead, and that was kind of championship hopes gone for him. Um, but Fabio this year has had his kind of championship contention ending crash couple of races ago. And so he is 23 points behind Pecco Bagnaia. And so, there could be various ways of Pecco winning the championship, but Pecco's really been the one, on fire the second half of the season. I mean, he's overcome a 90-point deficit to lead the championship. So
I'm so jealous because, Verstappen was at one point, was kind of pulling into that 90-point thing, and we all thought maybe Ferrari. Well, we hoped, we didn't actually think it could happen. But me, as a Ferrari fan, hoped that Charles could overcome a 90-point deficit, and it just it all just meandered out. And well done, Max. But I'm so jealous of, the sport you love, all going down to the final race.
yeah.
That's
yeah.
And on Sunday, with all to play for, as you said, we can also watch the NASCAR event where Chastain's plantains will be in the playoffs because of his ride. And you have to serve the plantains around the edge of the
right.
bowl.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. For sure.
people would have to scrape them around the inside of
But
the
that's
bowl
what he
before they
did.
eat them. I know,
That's
I saw
how,
it.
how he reached fame. I'm just
Yeah.
saying. I mean, I can't do all of the marketing.
Okay,
over here.
let's just end on that one maybe.
Yeah.
I've watched the replay of that thing a number of times now, and it's weird. It doesn't look like he kind of goes any faster by crashing into the wall. Yet all of a sudden he's overtaking everybody. It's like this weird kind of.
Because you don't need traction. Now it's just power.
Yeah,
you let
but
the
what I mean
wall
is
do your steering.
there's this optical illusion where the cars on the and they're all on the track, but let me call it the cars that are legitimately on the track look to be going faster than this
trying
guy
to
that just
turn.
drives into a wall. But then somehow he gets this kind of weird kind of Sonic the Hedgehog boost off being on the wall, and it just kind of flies him around the inside or outside. Sorry,
Because you don't have to feather the throttle or be in anything other than the best gear. You're just trying to stay on the track when you're on the inside. When you're on the outside, it's like, how fast can I go?
I don't think we're going to see this as the norm now, though, that every single race with every single car is just on the outside against the wall all the way.
To close this, I just listened. They just released all of the NASCAR drivers' radio from that event, and they loved it. They thought it was hilarious. They're like, "What in the world is happening?" And his engineer, radio contact from the pit lane, thought it was the funniest thing in the world. Now, a lot of people are saying they're going to restrict it, so you can't do this in the future at the end. But what did he do that's wrong? So, I guess you have to legislate it out if you think it's wrong, but he didn't really break a rule, hypothetically. Anyway, sorry. Enough about that.
That's good. So okay, Kyle, then. So I think what the plan is, the MotoGP season is going to come to an end. Formula One season is going to come to an end. You're going to go and get your bar ready. I'm going to go and think about my free beer. And then somewhere in February or March, maybe we'll do a Dirty Side episode from the bar.
Right.
And I can enjoy my free beer while talking to Brian over Zoom and just wave it in his face. Unless you fly down, Brian, and we have a live from the bar episode.
I think I could do that.
Yeah.
Well, there we are. So, Kyle, been great speaking to you.
Yeah.
Have to see if we can get Chaz on as well sometime. You know, balance the books, get both sides of the petrol head
Right.
on.
Right. Absolutely.
Kyle, thanks so
So,
much, man.
yeah.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah, good luck with
Thank
the
you.
cafe. And Brian is definitely going to throw $100 and become a part owner.
Well, if I can name something,
All right.
Nico Hulkenberger, if that sticks.
All right. I mean, yeah, I'll throw that up as a perk on my investment page. So,
Kyle, thanks, man. Really appreciate it.
Nice one.
yeah, it's been quite an honor. I feel very, very honored and privileged to be on here. It's been nice to be interviewed instead of the other way around a little bit.
Very cool. Thanks, man. Be well, Kyle. Talk soon.
You as well. Bye-bye.
Okay, so as Kyle mentioned in there, he's got the backing. It's a real bricks and mortar store. He's signed the lease. I know exactly where it is. I'm going to go there when it opens. However, if you do want to get on board, and I'm hoping he's going to add the Hulkenberger investment option to the lineup soon. But if you do live local, or even if you don't and you want to help the guy out, then it is Main Vest. So it is www.mainvest, all one word, .com, and look for Petrolhead Cafe, and it will pop up there, and you can do any increment you like from I think $100 upwards, and sure you'd appreciate anything that you guys could do. So I'm definitely going to be checking that place open when it opens. It's pretty much close, just down the road from a place where I've been axe throwing before, which I've got to say is one of the single greatest things I've ever done for a night out.
I've never done
bowling's
axe
cool,
throwing.
but throwing
Yeah.
an axe and the thud when it hits the target.
Yeah.
Oh.
That sounds good. I wish I got to give that a try. And
You've got to give
don't
axe.
go down on bowling.
Bowling's good. I love bowling. It's a great night out. But there's something about throwing an axe and watching it stick in a wall that is just it's satisfying on many levels.
Sometimes we have a little too much to drink. I think we'd be dangerous at axing.
Oh, they serve alcohol there.
No, I know, but by the amount at the end, it's not smart to be around axes. So anyway, as we said last week, and especially, I don't know if everyone noticed this, but the Mexico update was horribly slow to the play on system. So it took us quite a while, actually into the evening, to get the updates. But we have the top 10 from the Dirty Side League. Heidi O, Team 1, used a Mega Drive and nailed it. 264 points. Heidi, way to go. Followed by Clint E with Yuki's Potty Mouth. Andrew T, Alpha Taylor, again Andy, I see you. Followed by me, which is basically where I always am, right behind Andy. Balotelli 21, Red Bolino, nice job. Yoav A, King Julian's Race Tests. Roman M, Rampuri F1 Team, ALS Nutcracker Wannabes, Jim M, Guitar Hero, nice work, Nimrod A, Mercedes Nuts. And then, as I did once, I'll give one extra shout-out point, because I did it for myself, so I should do it more often. Renato from the Discord, the man, Flying Hakkinen, nice work. Tied, if it's a tie, I actually have to keep going, so cruise seats. Nice job, guys, to everybody. And that puts us for the season with only 2 races left. We'll talk about the second to last, the penultimate race here in a second, Brazil. But with Brazil and Abu Dhabi, it leaves us with Andy T in front, myself, Balotelli 21, Red Bolino, Clint E, Yuki's Potty Mouth, we just talked about, Roman M, Rampuri F1 Team, Renato Flying Hakkinen in 6th, Vanch J, Team 1, Tomas H, 8th, Carrie H, Team 1, and then Edward, Jason S, Gunnar Stroud, 10th, rounding out the top 10. Great work. Bring it. We're almost there.
I was going to say, just looking at this leaderboard now, right? So Andy, who's top, has still got a Mega Driver left, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we know.
You don't. You
Correct.
played yours,
I can't
right?
get any better.
No, well, what I mean is, I'm just trying to work out like how far down the leaderboard. What we're looking at. We're kind of a good week. We had a Mega Driver this week, and they hit 284 points. So let's just say with Sprint, maybe we see a 300er come in this week, right? So if I go down the leaderboard, Roman N in 5th has got a Mega Driver, and he's 175 points ish back from you. Then Renato doesn't have Mega Driver. Vanch does, but is a good 400-ish points back from you. So I think if Andy plays his Mega Driver on Verstappen, you're toast. You're not going to raise the flag at the top of the Dirty Side leaderboard, right? Because at this point now, I'm nowhere. So I'm kind of rooting for my co-host here to try to take the title.
What?
But
What's with all the kindness between us this week? That's not why people tune in.
No. But you see, I root for you now, and then when you lose, I'll laugh at you. So it's
yeah.
a silver lining, right? It can go either way. But I was just kind of looking at
Works.
it because I think we're about to go on to Brazil now, right? Before we segue on to Brazil, that's pretty much where everybody that's got a Mega Driver left, unless they forget, they're probably going to play it this week because it's a
Correct.
sprint race,
Sprint
and
race.
you can really kind of double down on the points. But like I say, Clint, Balotelli, they've all played theirs. So Roman M here sitting on the sidelines could make a big charge through at the end but if everyone Mega Drives Verstappen, then no one's going to catch each other.
Well, and actually, also think of it this way. So Roman M, Rampuri F1 team, you are 40 points behind Red Bullino. And Andy already won the first half T-shirt. I'm not giving myself another T-shirt. So, assuming I stay anywhere near the top there, I mean, it's an assumption. But therefore, the next person up is going to win. And
true.
So there's all to play for amongst basically the top 7. 8, actually, so close as well, Tomas. So anyway, I'm super excited. 2 races left.
I'm just going to put my strategy out there already because I'm so far back. So I'm just going to say screw it, and I'm going to Mega Drive Lewis.
Hey, I still think Lewis could do something. This
I know.
weekend.
If everyone Mega Drives Max, then you don't catch up anybody, right? So I might as well have one final roll of the dice. I'm going to pick. Maybe it'd be Lewis. I'll have a look and see how free practice turns out. But I'm not going to Mega Drive Max because it's pointless.
So we've mentioned this, and we had Dagan on Formula Market, and I think we're going to do a Formula Market thing next year for the season as well. And I don't know if we'll switch or do one or both. I'm not sure yet. But I really like Formula Market. So Dagan, if you're listening this far into the episode, shout out. I am all in on Lewis. All of my GPT is in Lewis Hamilton because I have no more money to gamble. So I'm just putting all my Formula Market GPT into Lewis. So but because he does well at Brazil, and let's talk about Brazil. Yep,
I love it.
I know I'll let you start. You love it. I like it a lot, but apparently not Rob Vale levels.
No, you don't. And actually, the more I think about it now, the more I'm thinking this might edge above Spa for me.
What?
There is something about almost every aspect of the track, which I can't say about a lot of tracks. Like I love the drag. I'm almost going to start from not the start-finish line. If I almost start from the last but one corner, that kind of last hard left-hander, as I kind of head on up. In fact, I'm probably moving ahead from where we were going to talk about. Screw it, I'm going to do it now.
Yeah, go for it.
It's one of the few anti-clockwise, as I would say, or counterclockwise, as they would say over here, which means the neck strain is the opposite direction. So the drivers actually apparently suffer a lot more here because their neck muscles are used to going the other way around tracks, and this time the G-force is the other way. But if you think about that last but one corner, it's a hard left-hander, and then they start the ascent. I love the fact this is built on a hill, and they didn't just bring in bulldozers and just flatten the whole thing out, right? So it's the uphill, it's the sweeping left, it's flat out, even though it's allegedly a corner, then onto the straight, and the downhill left into the Senna S's are just phenomenal. I love it.
It is. It really is. And I got to say, if people haven't seen it, go watch some of last year's race. And you could watch the highlights, but if you have the opportunity to watch, the race itself, Lewis had taken a new engine and taken a penalty, and then his rear wing, and we're not going to rehash last year's race because we weren't even a podcast then. But it was so fun to watch as he came out of turn 12 with, let's admit, a faster car than everybody else. And he would come out at turn 12, and if you got the turn perfect, and then that little upward bend that you describe as a turn but really full throttle, and he got that perfect, he would be on someone's bumper coming towards the start-finish line. And it was then a matter of how would he overtake them. And because he started 20th at the sprint, it was basically a day and a half of Lewis overtaking the entire field over and over again in a car that was, as I said, an engine undercut that he pulled by replacing it. But it was so much fun to watch because, as you said, then you come up to the straight and then you drop down to the Senna S, and it's a sort of technically challenging track when you get into the S and then around the midfield and the infield, and then you come out of 12.
Is like they describe it as lots of karting turns, and there's so many overtaking
and they're
opportunities.
Banked as well.
Yeah, banked and up and down hills, and I love
now
this
you're getting
track.
Me excited. I hope the listeners are getting excited too. I'm ready. I'm in, baby.
And because it's like it's not blink and you miss it, but it is so short. It's one of the shortest tracks out there, so we'll do 71 laps of this bad boy. It's only 2.67 miles long. I didn't know this when I was kind of looking at the history of it, so I knew it had been around for a long time. So it was it first hosted F1 back in 1973, so it predates even me. And it was a much longer layout. Actually, if you go on Wikipedia and take a look at the images of the old layout versus now, where the back straight is now, the true straight, not the kind of curved one at the start finishing line, that thing like disappears off and goes and does like a whole extra part of the track. So they kind of cut that down in 1990. And it's only really had a couple of modifications since. It's got the longest pit lane in F1. This is one of the most expensive pit lanes to take a stop at.
Yeah, didn't know that.
Well, if you think about where you come up the hill and you sweep round to the left, the entrance is right there. It doesn't spit you back out until the arse end of the center S is, right? So big old pit lanes. So
we kind of described the track already in terms of, the start-finish line, a bit uphill, then down into the center S, the infield, the 12th turn, or the junction, I guess it's called. That left-hander, and then you kind of get the bend left after that, uphill towards the start-finish. Here's a downer, though. Just as I was doing, some additional research, 3/4 of the winners at Interlagos, because the Brazilian GP hasn't always been at Interlagos, but pretty much it has. But 3/4 of the Interlagos winners have come from first or second. That was a surprise to me. I expected more diversity down the grid, more sort of parity of people coming from third,
25% of the time they don't.
That's correct.
That's quite high for an F1. I mean, pole. You should actually, maybe you should do that as a SAP stat of like rank all of the circuits by their diversity.
Yes, I could also make up the answer right now and tell you that 63% of the time, SAP stats, 62% of the time in the weather that's raining. And anyway, one of my favorite fables of Interlagos, and I've heard it a few times over the years, but we did a little breaking news and a little research here. Was that Rubens Barrichello?
Barrichello.
Yeah,
don't go cello in this.
Okay. Well,
he's not an instrument.
Well, Rubens has often said he gets a weather report from his grandma, and I've quoted that a couple times on this here podcast early on, especially, and I never actually seen it mentioned. And I think I mentioned it to Paul or to other people. Like, have you ever heard of this? And no one heard of it. So I found an article from April of 2001. I'm not sure the internet had been invented yet, but apparently it had, from a website called crash.net. And there's a quote. So again, a little grain of salt, 2001, crash.net. But anyway, in the 2001 race, Rubens said, "This year is my best ever chance to win this race. I really want to win this, but I'm not making any promises. A lot of factors have to be taken into account, from how practice goes on Friday and Saturday, to the best setup of choice, to what my granny Isaura predicts for the weather. I trust her much more than the weather forecast, and she lives here." So maybe it's true. Maybe the fable of Rubens' grandma giving him the weather is accurate. I want it to be, because I do love this track. And if there's a question about the weather, we got to get Rubens' grandma on the phone.
Yeah, agree. And I think one of the things that probably plays into tipping this one ahead in the excitement terms is because since the early 2000s, this has been shunted to the back end of the calendar, which actually means we've seen quite a few titles decided here. So we had Alonso in 2005 and 2006 secure the title here. Kimi grabbed it in 2007. Massa almost got it in 2008 when he celebrated it in the garage, but then Lewis actually won the title. And Button, as we did in our Brawn episode, Button secured the title in Brazil. Not that Paul remembers it, because he doesn't remember anything about the day that it was won, apparently. But so I think that's what
SAP Stats, Brazil edition. Sorry to cut you off, Rob.
I was going to say SAP Stats, Brazil edition, cut and rub off edition.
I can't pronounce Ruben's last name. What's wrong with me today? Having a brain fart. Anyway, so you mentioned it's a short track. It is. I'd forgotten how quick it is. And a good way to see is the lap record. 2018, Valtteri, 1 minute and 10 seconds. That's fast.
Yeah.
So especially, as you say, long pit lane, on a relative basis, it's even more penal from coming in, going out. So interesting. A lot of repeat driver winners, again, through the history of the Brazilian GP, not just Sao Paulo. Alain Prost 6 times, Carlos Reutemann, Michael Schumacher 4 wins, Seb and Lewis 3, a load of people at 2, and it cannot be ignored that friend of the pod, Jack Villeneuve, also won here.
Did we interview him?
Yeah, we might have. Go check it out. 12 wins for McLaren, 11 for Ferrari, 6 for Williams, Red Bull and Mercedes 5 each. However, you mentioned Massa almost winning and his family celebrating in '08, which is an amazing video.
Heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking.
It is. It got me thinking a little bit. And last week, we talked about the history of some Mexican drivers in F1, especially given Los Hermanos Rodriguez, the track for the Rodriguez brothers who raced in F1, and their father who pulled some strings with the president, made the track, blah, blah, blah. So what's the history of Brazilian drivers in F1? And in Mexico, it was a sort of limited number of drivers who'd been in F1. And I kind of like this. Like, I'll do this every so often for different countries as we go. It's a new thing we're doing here. But Brazil, holy cow, is the history rich of F1 drivers. I mean, more so than I'd even really started thinking. Obviously, Senna, one of the greatest drivers ever. You mentioned Massa. He was Brazilian. He almost took the title on his home track, which would have been friggin' amazing. Rubens and his grandma. Don't forget Nelson Piquet and the Piquet family. How about a gentleman named Emerson Fittipaldi and the entire Fittipaldi family? Oh my God. Like, there have been 32 F1 drivers who have represented Brazil. 32! 3 world champions. Senna won 3 titles. Piquet won 3 times, and Emma won 2. Rubens was a runner-up twice in 2 seasons, and Massa obviously in '08. There have been 6 Brazilian drivers to win a GP with a total of 101 wins. Holy cow. Although 41 of them are Senna. But still, that's 60 other wins amongst the other 5 drivers, who are tremendous. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention honorary Brazilian citizen Lewis Hamilton. This summer in June, made so by the lower house of Parliament. Lewis has always talked about Senna being his sort of idol and someone he looks up to. And then when he won last year holding the Brazilian flag, the lower house of Parliament appreciated his love of the track, the country, and the history of drivers, and they made him an honorary Brazilian citizen. So
he's not. They're not claiming all of his wins, though. You're not.
I was going to say they could put some wins on top of the 101. Exactly.
No. I think actually we already did. One of my early blogs was Another Brit in the Wall, where we looked at the number of British drivers and British influence in F1, and that's fairly large as well.
It's amazing. I mean, it is tremendous. And so, rich history of amazing drivers at a really cool track. Let's hope that the weekend unfolds, to be fantastic. And as we said briefly up front, right, it is a sprint race. So Friday we're going to have, practice and sprint. Practice and quali. Saturday will be practice and sprint, and then Sunday the race. So just get your lineups prepared accordingly.
Yeah, I can't wait. I really can't wait. I just hope it's a good one. I hope. Do we know if Ruben's grandma is still alive? Did you research that when you looked into it?
I don't. I don't know.
I was going to say, I hope she can kind of give us a good forecast where we get. I like a little bit of mix-up weather at Brazil, a little bit of sprinkling of rain, because Brazil's one of those circuits as well where it can rain on the far end of the circuit and not the other. Despite the fact it's not a very, very big circuit, it doesn't really cover much land. Somehow, we'll always get that where it starts to rain at one end and not the other. I think maybe the weather system moves really slowly across there.
Interlagos means between the lakes, and with the elevation changes we referenced, I think between the lakes. The elevation.
Ooh, look who swallowed a geography encyclopedia.
Wow. My Spanish is muy bueno. So.
Right. So on that note, we're looking forward to race week. Next Sunday will be our review episode of Brazil, and it won't be. Are we back to back to Abu Dhabi? We are, aren't we? I think we are. Brian's showing me a face that would suggest he's not 100% sure that we are or not. So if we are, which I think we are, it will be a preview of Abu Dhabi. If it's not, we're going to have to scramble because we're not planning any other content for the week in between.
And on that note, we appreciate everyone listening as always. You guys, all of you are the best. Tell your friends, and if we did something poorly, tell us. We'll keep working on it as always. Be well, be safe. Have a great week, everybody.